From the beginners to the more experienced cyclists, most of us who have followed a structured training plan have wondered one time or another how often we should test our FTP. If you're simply looking for that answer and none of the entertainment value, the answer is that you should be testing it at the start and/or end of every training block. Stick around to hear the reasoning behind this answer and also to see the results of my most recent test. I'm finally back, and I've got a dumb mustache because I think it's a crime to waste shaving a good beard if you're not gonna rock a stupid mustache for at least a few days. So I've spent the past 6 weeks traveling between Portland, Oregon and Missoula, Montana, and while I did have a bike with me, I didn't really do any structured training. Prior to leaving for this trip, I had an FTP around 320 watts and a watts per kilogram ratio of 5.2. Pretty good numbers, but I was also finishing a racing block and carrying absurd amounts of fatigue. So when I left for this trip, I decided to take the time to enjoy riding without structured training with the expectation that my FTP would drop. And this is okay. But when I got back, I needed to know if my training zones were still accurate. This leads into the meat and potatoes of this video. How often should you test your FTP? The frequency of performing a cycling functional threshold power test, or FTP test, depends on various factors, including your training goals, fitness level, and training plan. However, in general, it's recommended to conduct an FTP test at the beginning and/or end of every training block, which is approximately every 4 to 8 weeks. The point is to assess your current fitness level accurately and adjust your training zones accordingly. Your FTP represents the highest average power output that you can sustain for approximately 1 hour, and it serves as a crucial reference point for setting training intensities. I've got an FTP testing tips video which is clickable in the top right of this video, and I'll put a link in the description below. By regularly testing your FTP, you can track your progress and ensure that your training zones remain appropriate and challenging, which stimulates physical adaptation and increased cycling performance. If you're a competitive cyclist or training for a specific event, you may want to schedule FTP tests closer to the 4-week mark to closely monitor your improvements and adjust your training accordingly. On the other hand, recreational cyclists or those with less focused training goals may opt for FTP tests once every 8 weeks or greater to allow for more extended training blocks. Remember that an FTP test can be physically demanding, so it's essential to approach it with proper preparation and recovery. It's a good practice to taper your training load a little bit leading up to the test and allocate sufficient time for recovery afterwards. As a cycling coach, I also follow up the FTP test with a zone benchmarking workout to help the athlete and myself determine if the results of the FTP test are accurate. Because first-time test takers and less experienced riders may struggle with FTP test pacing, which can result in the test displaying a lower FTP estimation than they're truly capable of. And an athlete with an incorrect FTP isn't going to get the training stimulus and physical adaptation they're looking for if the workouts are too easy or too difficult, which is another reason FTP tests should be conducted regularly. As I'm smacking headfirst into these 400+ watt blocks and my test is coming to an end, I'll point out that ultimately the ideal frequency of FTP testing will depend on your individual circumstances and training program. Consulting with a qualified coach or experienced cyclist can help you determine the most suitable testing schedule based on your specific goals and needs. And here's my result from this test. 306 watts, which is 14 watts lower than when I left from my trip and brings my watt per kilogram ratio down from 5.2 to 4.8. But that's to be expected after 6 weeks of unstructured training and a bit of weight gain. No stress on my end. It's a good baseline and accurate truth data as I begin the next block of my training plan. Plus, it's unsustainable and extremely fatiguing on your physiological system to be running at or near peak performance for extended durations. So I've been enjoying the unstructured training and associated recovery, and I'm glad the FTP drop wasn't massive. I'd like to end on this note too. Please don't judge your skill as a cyclist by comparing your FTP numbers to mine. We all have different circumstances, and I'm blessed with a lot of time to train and a body that handles heavy loads of training stress pretty well. That doesn't mean I'm a better or worse cyclist than you. Your FTP is just a number. It doesn't define you as a cyclist. But you are defined by how hard you work and how you treat other people. So test your FTP at regular intervals at the start and end of training blocks, train hard and rest hard, and be good to each other. And on that note, me and my stupid mustache are out of here.